Hello and welcome. It is time to let the day and all of its concerns simply fade away. Find your most comfortable position and gently close your eyes. Let's begin with a single, slow, deep breath. Breathe in deeply. As you breathe out, feel the tension begin to leave your body. There's nothing else you need to do tonight. It's nothing to focus on and nothing to remember. The story I am about to tell is just a quiet murmur in the background, a calm and steady presence. Tonight we will travel back to the year 1519, at the humid alien coast of Mexico, to hear the story of the nightmare of being a conquistador deep in the Aztec Empire. So just relax and allow the sound of my voice to accompany you as you drift towards a deep and peaceful sleep. Our story begins in the spring of the year 1519. Your name is Mateo. And for months, your world has been the creaking timber and stale air of a cramped Spanish caravel. You are a soldier, a poor man from the dry, dusty plains of Extremadura, who has gambled everything on this mad venture to a new world, a world that promises unimaginable riches. But as the ship finally drops anchor in a shallow turquoise bay and you get your first true sense of the land of the Mexica, it is not a feeling of glory that settles upon you, but one of a deep and profound unease. The first thing that strikes you is the heat. It is not the dry, baking heat of a Spanish summer. It is a wet, heavy, oppressive heat that clings to your skin, making your woolen doublet and your leather jerkin feel like a suit of suffocating armor. The air is so thick with humidity, it feels as though you are breathing water. It is a heat that saps the strength from your limbs and promises a constant, wearying battle against your own body. The second thing is the smell. It is a rich, overpowering scent of rot and life, of sweet, cloying blossoms and damp, decaying earth. A smell so alien and so powerful it seems to coat the back of your throat. And then there is the sound. Not the familiar sounds of Europe, but a constant, high-pitched, chittering hum of insects, punctuated by the strange, guttural cries of birds you cannot name. It is the sound of a world that is teeming with a life that is utterly indifferent to you. You are one of roughly 500 soldiers, a tiny, isolated outpost of the Spanish crown, under the command of a man named He is a man of restless ambition and a gambler's charm, his eyes burning with a fever for gold and glory that seems to outweigh any sense of caution. You and your comrades are a motley collection of veterans from the wars in Italy, young men seeking their fortune and a few desperate souls running from a troubled past. You have steel swords, crossbows, a few primitive harquebuses, and 16 horses, which seem to clomp nervously on the strange, soft earth, their familiar, leathery smell a small comfort in this alien world. Your first encounters are with the local Totonac people. They are unlike any people you have ever seen. Their skin is the color of bronze, their dark hair is worn long, and their only clothing is a simple loincloth. They approach your camp not with aggression, but with a deep, cautious curiosity. Their eyes wide as they stare at your pale skin, your beards, your metal armor, and most of all, your horses, which they seem to view as some kind of monstrous man-beast hybrid. They bring you gifts of food, strange flat cakes made from a grain called maize, the roasted flesh of a large, ugly bird they call a turkey, and fruits of a sweetness and flavor that you have never before experienced. In their eyes you see a fear and a deference that is unsettling. It is not you they fear, you realize, but the distant, unseen power they serve. The great emperor in the mountains, Moctezuma. Soon, the emissaries of that emperor arrive. They are men of a different sort entirely. They are carried on litters and they are dressed in magnificent robes of brightly colored, intricately woven cotton and adorned with the shimmering, iridescent green feathers of the quetzal bird. Their bearing is one of immense, unshakable authority. They do not look at you, a common soldier, but speak only to their words translated through a strange, winding chain of interpreters. They bring gifts from their emperor, and these gifts are what seal your fate. They are not the simple offerings of the coastal tribes. The servants unroll their cotton cloths to reveal objects of a beauty and a value that make you gasp. There is a great circular disk of solid gold, as large as a cartwheel, carved with the symbols of the sun. There is another, even larger disk of solid silver, representing the moon. There are helmets, breastplates, and masks, all made of gold and inlaid with jade and turquoise. You stare at the treasure, and your mind is filled with a dizzying mixture of greed and terror. You have never seen such wealth in your life. It is more gold than you could have ever imagined. But the message of these gifts is a double-edged sword. It is a display of unimaginable wealth, a confirmation that the legends are true. But it is also a display of unimaginable power. What kind of emperor can afford to give away a king's ransom as a simple greeting? The gifts are not an invitation. They are a warning. They are meant to impress upon you the futility of your mission, to encourage you to take these baubles and sail away, content with your prize. But Cortazes does not see it that way. He sees it as a sign of weakness, an attempt to buy him off. And he sees the effect the gold has on his own men. The camp is now consumed by a fever of greed. Men who were already restless, who wanted to return to the safety of Cuba and report their findings, are now on the verge of mutiny, desperate to secure their share of this immense fortune. In a move of breathtaking audacity, decides to end the debate for good. He gathers the men and gives a rousing speech, speaking of the glory of God, the riches of this new land, and the eternal fame that will be theirs as conquerors. Then, under the guise of the ships being unseaworthy, he gives a secret order to the ship's masters who are loyal to him. You are standing on the beach when you see it happen. You watch as a small group of carpenters are rowed out to your own ship, the one that carried you across the ocean. You see them go below decks with augers and axes. And then you watch in a state of stunned, horrified disbelief as the ship begins to list. It sinks slowly, unnaturally, its sails and masts dipping towards the water until it comes to rest on a sandbar, its hull broken and flooded. And then one by one, the other ships of your small fleet follow suit. They are deliberately, methodically, and irreversibly scuttled. A wave of panic and rage rips through the men. You are trapped. Your only link to your own world, your only means of escape, now lies broken and submerged in the warm, clear waters of the bay. There is no going back. Burn the bridges behind you. The choice is no longer to conquer or to return home. The choice is now only to conquer or to die here, in this strange, hot, and hostile land, thousands of miles from everything you have ever known.
Ow.
The nightmare has truly begun. The sight of your own ships, broken and half submerged in the bay, is a vision of utter despair. The rage and panic that grips the army is a palpable thing. A wild, desperate energy that threatens to tear the small force apart. For a few tense hours, the expedition teeters on the brink of a bloody mutiny. But Cortez is a master of manipulation. He moves among the furious soldiers, his voice calm and reasonable, speaking not of what they have lost, but of what they stand to gain. He tells them that the ships were rotten, eaten through by shipworms, and that they would never have survived the journey home anyway. He paints a vision of the future, a future where they are not just poor soldiers, but lords of this new land. Their pockets heavy with a gold that makes the treasures of Europe seem like trinkets. Their anger, finding no outlet, slowly cools, replaced by a grim and sullen acceptance. You look at the sunken ships, then at the impenetrable wall of jungle, and finally at the distant, hazy mountains. You are trapped. Your greed for gold has been replaced by a more fundamental and desperate need. The need to survive. The only way to survive is to go forward, to conquer. You are no longer just a member of an expedition. You are a cornered animal. With the option of retreat now gone, turns his full attention to the march inland. He understands that his small force of 500 men cannot conquer an empire on its own. He needs allies. He finds them in the city of Sempawala, the capital of the Totonacs. Your army marches to the city, and you are stunned by what you see. Now it is a true city, with thousands of inhabitants, wide plazas, and great stepped temple pyramids, all of it built from plaster and stone that gleams white in the tropical sun. But as you spend time among the Totonacs, you begin to understand the fear that lies beneath the surface of their hospitality. They are a vassal state of the Aztec Empire, and they live under a yoke of brutal oppression. They are forced to pay a heavy tribute to Moctezuma, a tribute not just of maize, cotton, and gold, but of their own people. They tell you stories of the Aztec tribute collectors who walk through their city with an arrogant impunity, selecting the strongest young men and the most beautiful young women to be taken back to the capital, Tenochtitlan, to be sacrificed to their bloodthirsty gods. It is here that you get your first true glimpse into the religion of this new world. In a show of force and piety, leads a group of you into the main temple of Sempawala. You are expecting to see a pagan temple, a place of idols and strange gods. You are not prepared for the reality. You climb the steep stone steps of the pyramid. The air grows thick and heavy with a smell you cannot at first identify, a cloying, sickly sweet odor. You enter the small chamber at the top of the pyramid, and your senses are assaulted. The room is dark and close. In the center stands a great hideous idol, a grotesque figure with a monstrous face and glaring eyes made of polished stone. But it is the walls and the floor that stop your breath. They are coated with a thick, dark, crusted layer of something black. It takes you a moment to realize what it is. It is blood. Layers upon layers of dried human blood, splashed and smeared over every surface, so thick in some places that it is like a kind of foul plaster. The sickly sweet smell is the smell of a human abattoir. On a stone altar before the idol, you see the fresh, still wet stains from a recent sacrifice. This is not the abstract idolatry you were warned about by the priests back in Spain. This is something else entirely. It is a religion built on a foundation of ritualized death, on a scale that is impossible for you to comprehend. You came to this land to save souls and find gold, but you are now faced with a faith so alien and so terrifying that it feels like you have stepped into the anteroom of hell itself. The nightmare has taken on a new, darker texture, uses the Totonac's hatred of their Aztec overlords to his own advantage. He presents himself not as a new conqueror, but as a liberator, a powerful ally sent from a great king across the sea to free them from Moctezuma's tyranny. He convinces them to join his cause. And so the march inland begins in earnest. Your small Spanish army is now accompanied by a great host of over 1,000 Totonac warriors. Their faces painted for war, their weapons of obsidian and wood, a strange contrast to your own steel and iron. You leave the sweltering coastal plains behind and begin the long, arduous climb into the mountains. The journey is a physical ordeal. The path is steep and treacherous. The air grows thin and cold as you ascend, a welcome relief from the heat, but it makes your lungs burn with the effort. You are constantly either sweating under the midday sun or shivering in the cold mountain nights. The unfamiliar food continues to wreak havoc on your bodies. Many of the men, including you, are weakened by dysentery, a constant, draining sickness that leaves you weak and dehydrated. You learn to chew on the bitter leaves of a local plant that seems to help, a small piece of native wisdom that you accept out of sheer desperation. The psychological strain is immense. You're marching deeper and deeper into a vast, unknown continent. Every new valley reveals a new landscape, every forest a new and strange set of plants and animals. The world feels unstable, unpredictable. At night, huddled around a small campfire, the men speak in low, anxious whispers, their earlier bravado gone. They tell stories of monstrous beasts and of powerful sorcerers who can command the elements. You are a tiny, fragile island of familiarity in an ocean of alien uncertainty. And you know you are marching towards the heart of that uncertainty, towards the great unseen city of Tenochtitlan, the source of the blood-soaked religion and the unimaginable gold that has lured you to this place. Your fate lies there, and for the first time, you begin to suspect that the gold and the damnation might be one and the same. As your small army ascends from the humid coastal plains into the cool, thin air of the high mountains, the world changes again. The lush, tropical vegetation gives way to forests of pine and oak, a landscape so reminiscent of Spain that for a brief, deceptive moment, it feels almost like home. But this sense of familiarity is an illusion, quickly shattered. You have now left the lands of your Totonac allies and entered the territory of the Tlaxcalans. Your Totonac guides speak of the Tlaxcalans with a mixture of fear and respect. They are a proud, warlike people, a confederation of city-states who have never bowed to the might of the Aztec Empire. For generations, they have maintained a precarious independence, surrounded on all sides by Aztec vassals. They are a nation of warriors, hardened by a state of perpetual low-level warfare. Hopes to turn this enmity to his advantage, to forge the Tlaxcalans into the powerful allies he knows he will need to face Moctezuma. He sends messengers ahead, offering peace and proposing an alliance against their common foe. The Tlaxcalans' response is not with words, but with a sudden, ferocious, and overwhelming assault. The attack comes with no warning. One moment you are marching through a narrow mountain pass, the next, the air is filled with a high, piercing shriek from hundreds of conch-shell trumpets, a sound designed to terrify and disorient. From the forests on either side of the pass, an army of warriors emerges. It is the first time you have faced a true, disciplined army of this new world, and the sight is one of awe-inspiring terror. There are thousands of them, a raging sea of humanity. Their bodies are painted with fearsome patterns of red and black. They wear quilted cotton armor, and many are adorned with magnificent, brightly colored feather headdresses and standards that identify their clan and warrior society. They are not a disorganized mob. They move in disciplined squadrons, a forest of wooden spears and obsidian-tipped arrows advancing upon your tiny, terrified column. The order is given to form a defensive square, the classic Spanish Tergio formation. The crossbowmen and harquebusiers form the outer ranks, the pikemen and swordsmen in the center, with the precious cavalry held in reserve. You stand in the ranks, your heart hammering against your ribs, and you say a desperate, silent prayer. You are 500 men against what looks like 20,000. The odds are impossible. The first volley of Tlaxcalan arrows and sling stones darkens the sky, a hail of sharp, piercing death that clatters against your helmets and breastplates, finding gaps in the armor with a sickening thud. Then the cannons fire. The roar echoes through the narrow pass, a sound of pure, concussive thunder that is utterly alien to this land. The cannonballs tear great, bloody holes in the advancing Tlaxcalan ranks, but they do not falter. They close the distance with a terrifying speed, their war cries a constant deafening roar. Then the true nightmare begins. The hand-to-hand combat. You are no longer a soldier in a formation. You're a single, desperate man fighting for your life. The Tlaxcalan warriors are incredibly fierce. They wield a weapon you have never seen before, a Makua Weedle. It is a heavy, paddle-shaped club of fire-hardened oak, its edges studded with razor-sharp shards of obsidian. It is not a slashing weapon like a sword. It is a weapon designed to crush and to tear. You see one of these clubs strike a man's shield, and the wooden shield splinters, the obsidian blades cutting through it like glass. You see another swing that nearly decapitates one of your company's horses. Your fine Toledo steel sword gives you an advantage, but the sheer press of bodies is overwhelming. For every warrior you manage to strike down, 2 more seem to take his place. You fight in a state of pure adrenaline-fueled terror, your world reduced to the screaming face of the enemy in front of you. The clash of steel on wood and the slick feel of blood under your feet. The battle rages for hours. Your arm aches, your body is bruised, and your mind is numb with a fatigue so profound it is almost a stupor. It is only the discipline of your formation, the fact that you stand together, shield to shield, that keeps your small army from being completely enveloped and annihilated. As the sun begins to set, the Tlaxcalans, having tested your strength and suffered heavy casualties from your cannons and crossbows, finally withdraw, melting back into the forest as quickly as they appeared. They leave behind a field littered with their dead, and with your own. A profound, exhausted silence falls over your small, battered army. The adrenaline fades, replaced by the grim reality of the aftermath. Dozens of your comrades are dead. Scores more are wounded, their bodies bearing the horrific, jagged wounds that only obsidian can inflict. The camp that night is a vision of hell, a makeshift hospital filled with the groans and screams of the wounded as the barber surgeon does his brutal, clumsy work with a hot iron and a bone saw. The battle has shattered your last illusions. You are not gods. You are not invincible. You are a small, fragile, and very mortal band of men, and you have come terrifyingly close to being wiped from the face of the earth. For 2 weeks, this pattern continues. You fortify your camp, and every day the Tlaxcalans attack. And every day you somehow barely manage to hold them off. Finally, having failed to destroy you, and having developed a deep respect for your tenacity, the Tlaxcalan lords offer a truce. They have seen your prowess in battle, and they have realized that your hatred for the Aztecs is as deep as their own. They invite you into their capital city, not as an enemy, but as a powerful, if terrifying, new ally. You march into the city of Tlaxcala, your armor dented, your numbers depleted, your mind scarred by the horrors of the past weeks. You are welcomed as a hero, but you do not feel like one. You feel like a survivor of a shipwreck, washed ashore on a strange and violent land. You have survived the sea, you have survived your first great war, and you have gained the most powerful ally in Mexico. But the true heart of the nightmare, the great city of Tenochtitlan, still awaits. You spend several weeks in the Tlaxcalan capital, a period of strange and unsettling recovery. The Tlaxcalans, having proven your strength in battle, now treat you as honored guests and brothers in arms. You are given food, shelter, and your wounds are tended to with local herbs and poultices that, to your surprise, seem to work better than the crude methods of your own barber surgeon. It is a time of relative peace, but not of comfort. You are in another alien city, surrounded by another alien culture. You watch their religious rituals, and while they are different from those of the Totonacs, you see the same fundamental structure: the great stepped pyramids, the fearsome idols, and the dark stains on the stone altars that speak of the same tradition of human sacrifice. You have not found friends in a conventional sense. You have merely found the enemies of your enemy, a temporary and pragmatic alliance born of a shared hatred for the Mexica. As your strength returns, announces that the march will resume. Bolstered now by a great host of thousands of Tlaxcalan warriors, your small Spanish force seems more formidable, but you feel no safer. We're merely a small, hard kernel of steel at the center of a vast native army, whose motives and loyalties you do not fully understand. Your path to the great city of the Aztecs, to Tenochtitlan, lies through the city of Cholula. Cholula is a sacred city, a place of pilgrimage, famous for its hundreds of temples and its great pyramid, the largest in this new world. It is a powerful city and a nominal ally of Moctezuma. You enter Cholula with a sense of deep unease. You are welcomed with a public display of friendship, but the hospitality feels thin, brittle. The streets are strangely empty of women and children. The city's leaders provide you with food and lodging in a great courtyard, but your Tlaxcalan allies are forced to camp outside the city walls. They warn that the Cholulans are not to be trusted, that their welcome is a mask for a treacherous plot. Your interpreter, the native woman known as La Malinche, soon confirms these fears. She has learned from a local woman that the Cholulans, under orders from Moctezuma, are planning to trap your army in the narrow streets of the city and slaughter you all. The stage has been set for an ambush. The news spreads through your small army in panicked whispers. The nightmare of the Tlaxcalan battles is still fresh in your mind. The thought of being trapped in a maze of streets, surrounded and overwhelmed, is a vision of hell. You are caught once again between a seemingly friendly welcome and the threat of total annihilation. But Court Us is not a man to be trapped. He decides to act first, to turn the ambush back upon its architects with a display of terror so profound it will send a message all the way to Moctezuma. He arranges for all the Cholulan nobles and military leaders to gather in the great courtyard of your lodging the next morning, out of the pretense of a formal farewell ceremony. You are woken before dawn, the air cold and tense. You are ordered to arm yourself, to check the powder in your harquebus, to sharpen the edge of your sword. There is no battle cry, no rousing speech. There is only a cold, quiet, and murderous purpose. You take your assigned position along the walls of the courtyard, your comrades beside you, and you wait. The Cholulan nobles, unarmed and dressed in their finest ceremonial robes, begin to file into the courtyard. Thousands of them. The great space is soon filled with a murmur of conversation. They are entirely unaware of what is about to happen. You watch them, your stomach a cold knot of dread. These are the men who were planning to kill you, you tell yourself. This is a righteous act. God. But the sight of these unarmed men, so confident and so oblivious, feels less like a battle and more like an execution. Gives the signal. The sharp, deafening crack of a single harquebus shot echoes through the courtyard. It is the spark that ignites the inferno. From all sides, your fellow Spaniards open fire. The cannons, which had been hidden at the entrances to the courtyard, now roar to life. Firing canisters shot into the dense crowd. The packed mass of humanity is torn apart. The air is filled with a cacophony of screams, of shattering bone, and of the wet, ugly sound of metal on flesh. Then the gates are thrown open, and your Tlaxcalan allies, who have been waiting for the signal, pour into the city with a terrifying pent-up fury. The massacre spills out from the courtyard into the streets of Cholula. For the rest of the day, the city is a vision of slaughter. Temples are burned, homes are looted, and the Tlaxcalans take a brutal revenge on their traditional rivals. You are swept along in the violence, your mind a numb haze of smoke and screams. You are no longer a soldier fighting for survival against a warrior army. You are a butcher in a city of the unarmed. The nightmare has taken a new and terrible turn. The horror is no longer just what might be done to you. It is what you are now doing. The line between the civilized Christian and the savage idolater has been washed away in a river of blood, and you are not sure on which side you now stand. You leave Chula 2 days later, a smoking, silent ruin. The message has been sent. The road to Tenochtitlan is now open, but there is no sense of victory among the men. There is only a grim, blood-soaked silence. You have shown the people of this land the terrible extent of your capacity for violence. And now you must march to face the emperor, whose orders, you believe, initiated this whole brutal affair. You have survived the trap, but in doing so, you have become monsters. And you are now walking into the monster's lair. The army that leaves the smoldering ruins of Cholula is a different army from the one that entered it. The fear is still present, a cold stone in your gut, but it is now overlaid with a grim, brutal resolve. You have committed a great atrocity, and you know in your heart that there can be no forgiveness, no turning back. The only path to survival is forward, to the very heart of the empire, to the throne of the man who commands this vast and terrifying world. The march resumes, taking you high into the mountain passes that separate the Central Valley from the rest of Mexico. You walk the winding road that passes between the two great snow-capped volcanoes, and at Staccahuatl, their volcanic cones looming like silent white-robed gods against the deep blue sky. The air here is thin and cold, and you shiver in your thin cotton armor. A strange and unwelcome sensation after the suffocating heat of the coast. Then, one morning, you reach the crest of the pass, and the world falls away before you. You stop, speechless, as does every other man in the army. Below you, spread out like a map, is the Valley of Mexico. It is a sight of such impossible beauty and grandeur that it feels like a vision, a landscape from a romance of chivalry. A vast, shimmering expanse of 5 interconnected lakes glitters in the morning sun. Dotted around the shores of these lakes are dozens of white cities and towns, and crisscrossing the water is a complex web of green. Rectangular fields, the floating gardens the natives call chinampas. And there, in the center of the great Lake Texcoco, seemingly floating on the water itself, is the city of Tenochtitlan. It is a vision of impossible order and scale, larger, cleaner, and more magnificent than any city you have ever seen in Spain. Great white pyramids and towers rise from the island. Connecting it to the mainland are 3 long, perfectly straight causeways. You can see thousands of tiny canoes moving like water bugs across the surface of the lake. The sight fills you not with greed, but with a profound and humbling awe, immediately followed by a wave of pure, unadulterated fear. How can a few hundred men, exhausted and blood-stained, possibly hope to conquer a place like this? The descent into the valley is slow and cautious. Your army, with its thousands of Tlaxcalan allies, is a great snaking column of men, and your approach is no secret. You march onto the great southern causeway, a marvel of engineering, a wide stone road that seems to stretch for miles across the blue water. The vulnerability of your position is terrifying. You are on a narrow strip of land, with the deep water of the lake on either side. The causeway is crowded with people from the city, tens of thousands of them, who have come out to stare at you. They are not hostile, not yet. Their faces show only a deep, silent, and unnerving curiosity. You can hear the low, collective murmur of their voices in their strange, soft language, the Nahuatl tongue. Out on the lake, thousands of canoes filled with more people pace your march, their occupants watching you with the same intense, unreadable gaze. You feel like an animal in a parade, a strange beast being led to an unknown fate. Halfway along the causeway, the procession halts. A group of nobles, even more magnificently dressed than the emissaries you met on the coast, approaches. They signal that the great speaker, the Emperor Moctezuma, is coming. He arrives on a litter, a magnificent canopy of shimmering green quetzal feathers, held aloft by 4 tall noblemen. The litter is adorned with gold and polished jade. As he approaches, the nobles with him lay down fine cotton cloths on the causeway so that his feet should not touch the common earth. The Aztec lords who accompany him do not look upon his face. They keep their eyes lowered in a gesture of profound reverence. He steps down from the litter, and you see him for the first time. He is a tall, slender man in his 40s, his skin lighter than that of most of his subjects. He wears a simple but exquisitely made blue-dyed cotton robe, and his sandals have soles of pure gold. He moves with a quiet, somber dignity, an air of immense and weary authority. He is not a bloodthirsty tyrant in his appearance, but a scholar king, a high priest. Through the interpreters, he and exchange formal, flowery greetings. Gifts are exchanged. Attempts to embrace the emperor, a common Spanish custom, but the attendant lords rush forward to prevent it, shocked at such a breach of protocol. You watch this strange, tense ballet of cultures from the ranks, a simple, forgotten soldier witnessing a moment that will change the history of the world. Then the procession resumes, but now you are being escorted by the emperor himself into his city. You march through the great gates, and you are inside Tenochtitlan. The city is a marvel of order and cleanliness. Streets are wide, some made of packed earth, others actual canals of water, filled with a constant traffic of canoes. You see great markets, wide plazas, and everywhere the gleaming white pyramids of the temples. You are led to your lodgings, a vast, sprawling palace that belonged to Moctezuma's father. It is a magnificent building with hundreds of rooms arranged around a great central courtyard. It is luxurious, comfortable, and easily defensible. As the last of your soldiers and your Tlaxcalan allies file into the courtyard, the great stone gates of the palace are swung shut behind you. The sound of the heavy wooden beams falling into place echoes in the courtyard. You are in the heart of the most powerful city in the New World, surrounded by hundreds of thousands of potential enemies. You are surrounded by unimaginable wealth, a guest in a king's palace. The comfort is an illusion. You are not a guest. You're a prisoner in a golden cage. The first days inside the palace of Axiacatl are a surreal dream. You are living in a state of luxury you could not have possibly imagined. The palace is a vast stone labyrinth of cool, spacious rooms, airy courtyards filled with fragrant flowers, and even an aviary filled with brightly colored tropical birds. You are attended by hundreds of servants who seem to anticipate your every need, bringing you food and drink without being asked. The meals are lavish feasts. You are served dozens of dishes you have never seen before. Tender roasted turkey, venison in rich dark sauces, and an incredible variety of dishes made from maize. You drink a strange, frothy, and bitter beverage called chocolatal from ornate clay cups. It is the drink of the Aztec nobility, and it is both energizing and deeply unfamiliar. For a brief, deceptive moment, it feels as though you have succeeded. You have reached the heart of the empire and have been welcomed as gods. But the luxury is a thin veneer over a deep and constant unease. You are forbidden to leave the palace compound without an escort of Aztec warriors. You are vastly outnumbered, a few hundred men in a city of over 200,000. At night, you can hear the sounds of this immense, alien city all around you. The distant beat of drums from the temples, the murmur of a vast population, the splash of countless canoes in the canals. The sounds are a constant reminder of your precarious position, of the fact that you are on an island, in a lake, in the center of a hostile empire, with no possibility of retreat. The palace is not a guest house. It is a magnificent, comfortable prison. Ever restless, is not content to remain idle. He persuades Moctezuma to allow him and a contingent of his soldiers a tour of the city. You're chosen to be part of this group, and you step outside the palace walls for the first time. You are escorted to the great market of Tlatelolco. The sight is overwhelming. It is larger, more orderly, and more vibrant than any market you have ever seen in Seville or Rome. Tens of thousands of people are gathered, their voices a constant humming roar. The market is organized into sections, each selling its own specific goods. In one section, you see piles of exotic fruits and vegetables in every color imaginable. In another, you see merchants selling magnificent cotton cloaks, dyed in brilliant hues. There are sections for pottery, for tools made of obsidian and copper, for live animals, for medicinal herbs. There is even a section where human slaves, their necks held in a long wooden yoke, are being bought and sold like cattle. It is a city in itself, a testament to the immense wealth, power, and social organization of this empire. But it is the next destination on the tour that solidifies the true nature of your nightmare. It insists on being taken to the religious heart of the empire, the Great Temple, the Templo Mayor. It is a massive twin-stepped pyramid that dominates the central plaza of the city. You begin the long, steep climb up its 114 steps. As you ascend, the sounds of the city fall away, replaced by the wind and the faint rhythmic beat of a great drum. At the top of the pyramid are two small temples, one dedicated to Tlaloc, the god of rain, and the other to Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god of war, the patron deity of the Mexica. It is this second temple you are shown first. The smell hits you from yards away, the same sickly sweet, coppery stench you first encountered in Sempoala, but 100 times more powerful. You step inside the small, dark sanctuary, and the sight within is one of pure, unholy horror. The walls are caked black with layers of dried human blood. The air is so thick with the stench that you have to fight the urge to vomit. In the center of the room stands a colossal, grotesque statue of the god, its form monstrous and inhuman, its surface encrusted with a thick layer of blood and adorned with a necklace of sculpted human hearts in golden hands. Before the idol sits a large stone brazier, and in it something is burning. It is not wood or incense. It is 3 human hearts, fresh from a sacrifice performed that very morning, their smoke filling the small room with a foul, greasy odor. In that moment, you understand. This magnificent, orderly, and beautiful city, this paradise on the lake, is built upon a foundation of constant, industrial-scale human sacrifice. The religion that governs this land is a pact of blood, faith that requires the daily slaughter of human beings to keep the sun in the sky. This is not just a different faith to your 16th century Catholic mind. This is the literal, undisguised worship of the devil. This horrifying revelation, combined with the news that Aztecs on the coast have attacked your garrison at Veracruz, convinces Cordovez that the passive, friendly state of affairs cannot last. He makes another of his audacious, desperate gambles. He decides to seize the emperor himself. With a small group of his most trusted captains, goes to Moctezuma's own palace. You are one of the soldiers who waits, your heart pounding, in the courtyard outside. The captains enter, and after an hour of tense, quiet negotiation, they emerge. With them is Moctezuma. He is not in chains. He is not being visibly forced, but he is a hostage. He is escorted across the plaza to your own quarters. The emperor of the most powerful empire in the New World is now a prisoner in his own city, held captive in the same palace as you are. Still governs, still receives nobles, still performs his duties, but a Spanish guard now stands at his door. Your army now has a divine shield. No Aztec will dare attack the building that holds their living God King. But the fragile peace has been shattered. You have committed an act of unimaginable audacity and sacrilege. The golden cage now holds both the prisoner and the jailer, and the unsettling paradise of Tenochtitlan is now a powder keg, waiting for a single stray spark to ignite it. For several months, an unnatural and deeply unsettling calm settles over the palace and the city of Tenochtitlan. You are living in the heart of the Aztec Empire, and your prisoner is the emperor himself. Moctezuma, a man caught between the demands of his captors and the growing anger of his own people, governs from his gilded prison. He is treated with a strange, formal respect by your captains. You watch as he and play games of chance, wagering gold and jewels, a surreal pantomime of friendship between 2 men who are locked in a deadly struggle for the future of a continent. From your perspective as a common soldier, it is a time of intense psychological pressure. You are a guard in a prison that is itself a prison. You stand watch on the battlements of the palace, looking out over the vast alien city that surrounds you. The people of Tenochtitlan go about their daily lives, but you can feel their resentment, a silent, simmering hatred in the way they look up at your walls. You are still trapped, but now the dynamic has shifted. You are no longer just guests. You are the jailers of a living God, and you have no idea what will happen if that God's people decide to rise up against you. The gold fever, which had momentarily been replaced by fear, now returns with a vengeance. Under pressure from Moctezuma reveals the location of his father's treasury, a sealed-off chamber within the very palace you now occupy. When the wall is broken down, the sight within is enough to make the most hardened soldier weep with greed. It is a room overflowing with a treasure accumulated over a century of conquest. Stacks of gold bars, intricate jewelry, jade masks, and magnificent works of feather art. For days, the soldiers are occupied with the task of melting down these priceless artistic masterpieces into crude portable bars of solid gold. The greed is a palpable corrupting force in the small, isolated compound. Just as this uneasy status quo seems to have solidified, news arrives from the coast that throws everything into chaos. A new, far larger Spanish army has landed at Veracruz. It is led by a man named D, and he has come not to reinforce you, but to arrest for insubordination. Your small, beleaguered force is now caught between two impossible fronts: the simmering Aztec Empire before you, and a rival, hostile Spanish army at your back. With his characteristic audacity, makes another incredible gamble. He decides he cannot wait to be besieged. He will take the majority of his soldiers, the most experienced and loyal, and march back to the coast to confront in a surprise attack. A small garrison of his least experienced men will be left behind to guard Moctezuma and hold the palace in Tenochtitlan. You, Mateo, are one of the soldiers chosen to remain. You watch with a sense of profound dread, as in the veteran corps of the army march out of the city, their numbers bolstered by Tlaxcalan warriors. The force left behind is barely more than 100 men, a tiny, fragile island of Spanish steel in the heart of a city of hundreds of thousands. The man left in command is Pedro de Alvarado, a captain known for his courage, his charisma, and his brutal, hot-headed temper. With Cortes gone, the atmosphere in the city deteriorates rapidly. Alvarado lacks diplomatic skill, and his relationship with the Aztec nobility is one of mutual suspicion and contempt. The tension in the city rises. It's becoming a thick, palpable thing. The breaking point comes during the great festival of Toxcatel, a major religious ceremony in honor of the Aztec patron god Huitzilopochtli. The Aztec nobles ask Alvarado for permission to hold the traditional ceremonies in the courtyard of the great temple. Alvarado, deeply paranoid and seeing the gathering of thousands of warriors and nobles as a potential prelude to an attack, grants them permission. But he has already decided on a course of action, a brutal echo of the massacre at Cholula. You are ordered to prepare for battle. Put on your helmet and your breastplate, a knot of cold fear in your stomach. Under Alvarado's command, you and the other soldiers march to the great temple and take up positions at the sealed entrances to the sacred courtyard. Inside, the ceremony is at its height. Hundreds of the highest-ranking nobles and priests of the Aztec Empire, dressed in their most magnificent feathered regalia, are engaged in the serpent dance. They are unarmed, their bodies moving to the hypnotic, rhythmic pulse of a great hollow drum. Alvarado gives the signal. The gates are barred shut, and on his command you and your fellow soldiers rush into the courtyard and fall upon the unarmed dancers. It is a slaughter. It is a chaotic, brutal, and utterly one-sided massacre. The Aztec nobles, trapped and defenseless, are cut down without mercy. The sound of the slaughter is soon drowned out by a new sound, a deep, booming, and terrifying rhythm that echoes across the entire city. It is the sound of the great serpent-skin drum, the tapanasli, being beaten from the top of the pyramid of Huitzilopochtli. It is the Aztec call to war. The city, which had been in a state of festive celebration, erupts into a single, unified entity of pure rage. From every house, from every canoe, from every street, the warriors of Tenochtitlan emerge. Within an hour, your small blood-stained garrison is no longer the master of the city. You are besieged. You fight your way back to the palace, arrows and sling stones raining down on you from the rooftops. You make it back inside the palace walls just as the first wave of a furious, screaming mob of Aztec warriors begins to assault the gates. The golden cage has become a death trap. The air is filled with the roar of the war drum and the screams of a city that wants your blood. The long, terrifying night, the night that will forever be known as La Noche Triste, is about to begin. The city of Tenochtitlan transforms from a place of unsettling wonder into a roaring, singular entity of hate. The rhythmic, hypnotic beat of the great serpent-skin drum on the Templo Mayor becomes the ceaseless heartbeat of your nightmare. It does not stop, day or night, a constant booming reminder of the city's fury and your own impending doom. The assault on the palace is immediate and relentless. From the rooftops of the surrounding buildings, a ceaseless rain of projectiles descends upon your courtyard. Arrows, fire-hardened darts, and stones from slingshots fall in such numbers that they form a thick blanket on the ground. To cross the open courtyard is to run a gauntlet of death. The main gates of the palace shudder under the assault of battering rams and Aztec warriors, their faces contorted with rage, attempt to scale the high stone walls. Your days and nights become a blur of desperate, exhausting defense. You take your turn on the battlements, firing your crossbow through the crenellations until your arm aches and your fingers are numb. You watch as your cannons, loaded with canister shot, blast bloody holes in the dense ranks of warriors assaulting the gates. But for every man that falls, a dozen more surge forward to take his place. Sleep is a forgotten luxury, taken in snatched moments of an hour or two, your head resting on the cold stone of the parapet, your dreams filled with the sound of the war drum. Just as your small, battered garrison is on the verge of total collapse, a new sound cuts through the din of battle. The familiar, sharp blast of a Spanish trumpet is returned. Having defeated on the coast and absorbed the rival army into his own, he has marched back with a much larger force. He fights his way through the hostile city streets and breaks the siege, his reinforcements pouring into the palace courtyard. For a brief, glorious moment, you feel a surge of hope. You are saved. Your numbers are now stronger than ever, over 1,000 Spanish soldiers, plus your Tlaxcalan allies. But the hope is a fleeting illusion. Quickly realizes his mistake. He's not broken a siege. Has merely marched his entire army into the same death trap. The Aztecs, far from being intimidated by his larger force, simply renew their attacks with even greater fury. The entire city is now the prison, and you are all trapped within it. Your food is nearly gone, your water supply is low, and your gunpowder is dwindling with every volley. In a desperate gamble to quell the rebellion, plays his final, most valuable card, forces your captive Moctezuma to ascend to the roof of the palace, to speak to his people, to command them to lay down their arms. You watch the tragic spectacle unfold. The great emperor, dressed in his full ceremonial regalia, steps into the daylight on the rooftop. A temporary hush falls over the battlefield below, as the Aztec warriors see their divine ruler. Moctezuma begins to speak, his voice calm and authoritative, urging his people to stop their attacks, promising that the Spanish will leave the city if they are given safe passage. But the people who once revered him as a living god now see him only as a puppet, a traitor who has consorted with the monstrous invaders. The hush is broken by a single angry shout from the crowd. Traitor, then another, and another. The reverence has turned to contempt. The crowd, which had momentarily paused, now erupts in a new wave of fury, not just at the Spanish, but at their own shamed emperor. A shower of stones and darts is unleashed upon the rooftop. The Spanish captains try to shield Moctezuma with their own shields, but it is too late. A single heavy stone strikes the emperor on the head. He stumbles and falls, a look of profound, stunned disbelief on his face. He is carried back inside, his authority shattered, his body broken. He lingers for a few days, a silent, ghost-like figure who refuses all food and all aid, his will to live seemingly extinguished. When he dies, a new and more profound terror grips you. Your divine shield, the one thing that had kept the full, unrestrained fury of the Aztec Empire at bay, is gone. Now, there is nothing left between you and annihilation. With Moctezuma dead, and the attacks growing more ferocious by the day, makes the only decision he can. You must escape. To remain in the city is to face certain death by starvation or sacrifice. A desperate plan is formed. You will attempt to break out at night under the cover of a predicted dark, drizzling rain. The Aztecs have removed the bridges on the great causeway that leads to the western shore, so you and the army's carpenters construct a single, massive, portable wooden bridge, a prefabricated section that you will carry with you to span the gaps. The final, terrible preparation is the division of the treasure. The great hoard of gold is brought into the courtyard. The king's fifth and S share are loaded onto a few precious horses. Then addresses the common soldiers. Take what you will, he says, gesturing to the glittering pile of gold bars and jewels. But remember that gold is heavy, and a swift pair of legs is worth more than any treasure tonight. You look at the gold, the very substance that brought you to this hell. Your greed, your ambition, your desperation, all war within you. You see some of the veteran soldiers take only a few small, precious jewels, easily hidden. But you and many others, unable to bear the thought of leaving behind the prize for which you have sacrificed everything, begin to cram your shirts, your pockets, your satchels with the heavy yellow bars. You load yourself down with your fortune, the weight of it a reassuring, solid presence. It is a weight that will soon drown you. As a moonless, rainy midnight approaches, the gates of the palace are quietly, cautiously opened. The great war drum is momentarily silent. A tense, dripping hush has fallen over the city, laden with your armor, your weapons, and your heavy, cursed gold. You and the rest of the army slip out of the palace like thieves in the night and begin your silent, terrified procession onto the dark, wet expanse of the Tacuba Causeway. You move in near total silence, a long, dark serpent of men, horses, and native allies winding its way through the sleeping city. The drizzling rain and the low-hanging mist muffle the sound of your footsteps and the soft clink of your armor. For the first hour, the escape proceeds with an almost unbelievable smoothness. You reach the first of the great gaps in the causeway, a wide, dark channel of black water. The men carrying the immense prefabricated wooden bridge move forward, and with a low groan of exertion, they manage to place it securely over the gap. The vanguard of the army, led by himself, begins to cross. You are somewhere in the middle of the column, and you watch as the first 100 men make it safely to the other side. A fragile, impossible hope begins to bloom in your chest. Perhaps you will make it. Perhaps you will escape this cursed city after all. It is then that the alarm is raised. It is not a soldier's shout, but the high, piercing cry of a woman. Perhaps a woman who had come to the edge of the canal to draw water. Her cry is answered by the shrill whistle of a sentry on the causeway. And then, from the top of the Great Pyramid of Huitzilopochtli, the sound you have been dreading for months begins to boom across the lake. The deep, resonant, and terrifying pulse of the great serpent skin war drum, boom, boom, boom. It is a sound that shakes the very air, a signal that awakens the entire city. Within moments, the silent, misty night erupts into a hell of sound and fury. Conch shell trumpets shriek from every direction. The shores of the lake and the rooftops of the city light up with the flickering of 1,000 torches. And from the dark waters of the lake on either side of the causeway, a new threat emerges. A great swarm of war canoes, hundreds, then thousands of them, shoot out from the canals, filled with Aztec warriors. A relentless rain of projectiles begins to fall on your trapped and exposed column. Arrows, darts, and sling stones hiss out of the darkness, thudding into flesh and clattering against armor. You raise your shield, but there is no real cover on the wide, flat causeway. Men around you cry out and fall, their bodies tumbling from the narrow road into the black water of the lake. The Aztec warriors in the canoes are relentless. They paddle up to the very edge of the causeway, jabbing at the legs and bodies of your comrades with long, obsidian-tipped lances. Some even leap from their canoes onto the causeway, engaging in a desperate, chaotic hand-to-hand combat in the darkness and the rain. Your column, which had been an orderly procession, now dissolves into a panicked, struggling mob. The van of the army, already across the first gap, pushes forward, while the rear is being slaughtered. You're trapped in the middle, in a slow-moving crush of terrified men. You finally reach the portable bridge, but it has become a death trap. The wood is slick with rain and blood, and the immense weight of the men and horses crossing it has driven it deep into the muddy banks of the canal. It is stuck. It cannot be moved. The second great gap in the causeway now looms before you, a wide, impassable channel of black water. You are trapped. The army grinds to a halt. A great, panicked herd of men caught between the slaughter at the rear and the open water before them. Discipline evaporates. It is no longer an army. It is every man for himself. The scene at the second gap is a vision of pure chaos. Men at the back of the column, desperate to escape the arrows and lances, push forward with a blind animal panic. Those at the front are shoved from the edge of the causeway into the water. Horses, screaming with terror, are pushed in alongside them. The canal becomes a churning mass of dying men and animals. You are caught in this terrible human tide. You're pressed forward, your feet slipping in the mud and blood until you are at the very edge of the canal. You see the men in front of you disappearing into the water. And you see why they do not surface. The heavy bars of gold they had stuffed into their shirts, the very treasure for which they had risked everything, now act as a fatal anchor, pulling them straight down into the muddy depths. They are drowning, pulled to their deaths by their own greed. A great shove from behind sends you toppling over the edge. The cold, dark water closes over your head. The weight of the gold bars you yourself have packed into your jerkin is a terrible, undeniable force dragging you down. Panic, cold, and absolute seizes you. In that moment, your choice is simple: the gold or your life. With clumsy, desperate fingers, you tear at the fastenings of your jerkin, letting the heavy bars of metal your fortune, your dream, tumble away into the darkness. Freed from the weight, you kick and claw your way back to the surface, gasping for air. The gap in the causeway is now almost gone, filled with a gruesome, makeshift bridge. It is a bridge made of the dead bodies of your comrades, of struggling horses, of broken supply chests and cannon carriages. Without a second thought, you scramble onto this horrifying pontoon, clambering over the dead and the dying, and you make it to the other side. The rest of the night is a long-running battle in the darkness. You are part of a small, shattered remnant of the army, fighting your way along the rest of the causeway, turning to face your pursuers at every gap. When the gray light of dawn finally breaks, you find yourself on the mainland, huddled with a few hundred other survivors at the base of a great cypress tree. You look back at the causeway. It is a scene of unimaginable carnage. The lake is dotted with the floating bodies of your comrades and their horses. The great treasure of Moctezuma is lost forever, swallowed by the dark water. Of the more than 1,000 Spaniards who entered the city with less than 400 have survived. Almost all of your Tlaxcalan allies who were at the rear of the column have been slaughtered. This was La Noche Triste, the night of sorrows. It was not a battle, it was a rout, a catastrophic and humiliating defeat. You have survived, but you are wounded, exhausted, and you have lost everything. The nightmare is no longer a premonition. It is a reality, and you are living in its smoking, blood-soaked ruins. The gray light of dawn reveals the true and terrible cost of your escape. You huddle with the other survivors, a small broken remnant of an army, and you weep. You weep for the dead, for the friends whose faces you will never see again, whose bodies now lie at the bottom of Lake Texcoco. You weep for the lost treasure, the immense fortune that has vanished into the mud, and you weep from sheer bone-deep exhaustion and the profound traumatic shock of having survived a night that felt like the end of the world. But your ordeal is far from over. You're still deep in enemy territory, hundreds of miles from the sea, and the Aztec armies are regrouping. The days that follow are a long-running nightmare of their own. You and the other survivors begin a desperate fighting retreat towards the safety of your allies in Tlaxcala. You have almost no food. You survive on foraged roots and the few maize fields you manage to plunder. Your wounds untreated begin to fester in the humid air, and you are constantly harried. Aztec skirmishers shadow your every move, emerging from the forest to fire a volley of arrows and sling stones before melting away again. The retreat is a slow, painful crawl, a testament to pure animal survival. After several days of this, you reach the plains of Otumba, and there, waiting for you, is a new, vast Aztec army. Glittering sea of feather standards and obsidian blades arrayed to block your path and finish you for good. There is no hope of outrunning them. Your small, exhausted force, numbering barely 400, must now face an army of tens of thousands on an open field. This, you feel in your soul, is where you will die. What follows is not a battle of strategy, but an act of pure, collective desperation. You form a tight defensive square, a porcupine of steel pikes and swords, and you brace for the impact. The Aztec wave crashes against your formation, a relentless tide of warriors. You fight not with skill or technique, but with a numb mechanical fury. You are too tired to feel fear, too desperate to consider retreat. It is, and the last of his cavalry, who save you. In a moment of supreme suicidal audacity, he identifies the Aztec commander, a great noble adorned in a magnificent feather standard. With his few remaining horsemen, charges directly into the heart of the enemy army, a tiny wedge of steel against a mountain of flesh. In the chaos, they manage to cut down the commander and seize his battle standard. The effect is instantaneous and catastrophic for the Aztecs. Seeing their leader fall and their standard captured, a symbol of their army's spirit, a wave of panic ripples through their ranks. Their cohesive assault dissolves into a confused, terrified rout. The great army breaks and flees. You and your comrades, too exhausted to even cheer, simply stand, leaning on your swords in a field of the dead, having survived an encounter that, by all logic, should have been your end. You finally straggle into the safety of Tlaxcala, not as triumphant conquerors, but as ghosts, as skeletal wounded survivors of a great disaster. The Tlaxcalans, though they have lost thousands of their own warriors in the retreat, do not turn you away. They welcome you, tend to your wounds, and offer you food and shelter. Your survival against the Aztec army at Otumba has, in their eyes, elevated you to the status of demigods. The months that follow are a long, slow period of healing and rebuilding. But while your physical wounds slowly begin to mend, an invisible and far more terrible ally is beginning its work in the Valley of Mexico. A single soldier in the army of left behind at the coast had been sick. He was not sick with a familiar European ailment. He was sick with the smallpox, the disease carried inland by traders and messengers. Finds the dense population of the Aztec Empire, a people with absolutely no natural immunity. The result is an apocalypse. News begins to filter back to you in Tlaxcala, brought by spies and refugees. A great plague, a divine pestilence, is sweeping through Tenochtitlan and the surrounding cities. The stories are horrifying. People are covered in painful weeping pustules. They die in such numbers that there is no one left to bury them, and houses collapse on top of the dead within. The plague kills the strong and the weak alike. It kills warriors, it kills priests, and it kills the new Aztec emperor. The very man who had organized your expulsion from the city. You and your fellow soldiers listen to these stories, and you do not feel pity. You feel a grim, righteous sense of vindication. You see it as the hand of God, a divine punishment visited upon the heathens for their idolatry and their human sacrifices. It is a miracle, a sign that your cause is just and that heaven itself is now fighting on your side. The nightmare you endured on the causeway is now being visited upon your enemies 100-fold, by an enemy they cannot see, and against whom their obsidian swords are useless. With your enemy now crippled by this unseen scourge, the mood in the Spanish camp changes. The despair of the retreat is replaced by a cold, methodical desire for revenge. His army now bolstered by fresh reinforcements and new equipment arriving from the coast, begins to plan the final siege of Tenochtitlan. He initiates a project of incredible ambition. Here, high in the mountains of Tlaxcala, hundreds of miles from the sea, orders his shipwrights to begin constructing a fleet of 13 small warships, brigantines, equipped with cannons and sails. They are built in pieces, designed to be carried over the mountains by thousands of native porters, and then reassembled on the shores of Lake Texcoco. You watch the strange, impossible sight of a naval fleet being built in the middle of a forest, and you understand the sheer, unbending will of your commander. He does not intend to just defeat the Aztecs. He intends to eradicate them. The spring of 1521 arrives, and with it, the beginning of the end. The army that marches out of Tlaxcala is a different beast from the one that was shattered on the causeways a year before. It is a larger, more disciplined, and infinitely more ruthless force. Your own company is filled with new recruits from the coast, their faces fresh, their minds not yet haunted by the memory of the war drum. And you are accompanied by a vast, overwhelming army of native allies, tens of thousands of Tlaxcalan warriors, who see this as their final, ultimate chance to destroy their ancient and hated enemies. The journey back into the Valley of Mexico is not a fearful march into the unknown, but a slow, methodical, and vengeful procession. You are no longer intruders. You are an invading plague. Your first great task is the reassembly of the fleet. For weeks, you are part of a great human river, carrying the dismantled pieces of the 13 brigantines over the high mountain passes. You strain under the weight of the heavy oak timbers, the coils of rope, the massive iron anchors. It is a logistical feat that seems impossible, the construction of a navy in the heart of a mountain range. The ships are reassembled on the shores of Lake Texcoco, their masts raised, their cannons mounted. The siege of Tenochtitlan begins not with a direct assault, but with the slow, deliberate tightening of a noose. The first step is to seize control of the lake. Your new fleet, with its combination of sails, oars, and the devastating power of its cannons, is a weapon for which the Aztecs have no answer. You are assigned to one of the brigantines. Your job as a crossbowman to pick off the warriors in the enemy canoes. The great naval battle on the lake is a one-sided slaughter. The thousands of Aztec war canoes, so terrifying on the night of your escape, are now helpless against your floating wooden fortresses. Your cannons, firing grape shot, clear entire canoes with a single blast. The Aztec warriors fight with an incredible suicidal bravery, but their obsidian-tipped lances and arrows simply shatter or bounce off the thick hulls of your ships. Within a day, the lake is yours. The city's main artery for supplies and reinforcements has been severed. The next step is to seize the causeways. Your army is divided into 3 great divisions, each one assigned to one of the 3 main causeways that connect the city to the mainland. You, under the command of the brutal Pedro de Alvarado, are assigned to the same Tacuba causeway from which you so desperately fled. The irony is not lost on you. You also find and destroy the great twin-channeled aqueduct that carries fresh drinking water into the city from the springs at Chapultepec. The noose is now complete. You have cut off the city's food and you have cut off its water. The strategy is one of attrition, to let hunger, thirst, and the lingering smallpox do the work that your swords began. The days of the siege settle into a new, grim, and monotonous routine of battle. Each morning, you and your company begin your assault, fighting your way, foot by bloody foot, down the narrow causeway. The Aztec resistance is ferocious. They have built barricades and traps. They fight from the rooftops of the houses that line the causeway. The fighting is a brutal close-quarters affair of pike thrusts, sword cuts, and the constant deadly rain of stones from slings. Each evening, your small, exhausted force retreats back to the safety of your fortified camp on the mainland. And each night, the Aztecs emerge from the city to reclaim the ground you have just won, to tear down your temporary barricades and build new ones of their own. Every day, the same ground must be fought for and won all over again. The true nightmare of the siege begins at night. You lie in your rough shelter, trying to find a few hours of exhausted sleep, but there is no peace. From across the water, from the tops of the great pyramids in the besieged city, you hear the sounds. It is the deep, booming pulse of the war drum, the same sound that haunts your dreams of La Noche Triste. And then you hear the screams. The Aztecs have captured several of your comrades during the day's fighting. Now they are being sacrificed. You can see the flicker of the great ceremonial fires high on the Templo Mayor. You cannot see the act itself, but you can hear the high-pitched, agonized screams of the victims as their chests are cut open. It is a deliberate act of psychological warfare, a message sent across the water to you. This is the fate that awaits you. The drums and the screams seem to say, "This is how your own gods will die." The sound chills you to the very marrow of your bones and fills you with a cold, hateful rage that fuels your desire for revenge the next morning. The siege grinds on for weeks, then for months. You are no longer fighting for gold. You are fighting for your own survival and for vengeance. You watch as your comrades fall, their places taken by new Tlaxcalan warriors. The city is dying, you know this. It is starving, but it will not surrender. The new emperor, the young and fierce, has sworn to fight to the very last man. The nightmare has become a grim, grinding stalemate, a war of inches, where every foot of the causeway is paid for with a human life, and the only certainty is that this will not end until the magnificent city of Tenochtitlan is either a conquered prize or a tomb. After almost 3 months of the relentless siege, makes a final, brutal decision. The war of attrition on the causeways is too slow, too costly. It is time to enter the city itself and to destroy it, house by house, until there is nothing left to defend. The final phase of the nightmare begins. The fighting moves from the open causeways into the narrow streets and canals of Tenochtitlan. It is a slow, grinding, and terrifying form of urban warfare. Every rooftop is a fortress, every canal a potential ambush site. The progress of your army is measured not in feet, but in the number of buildings you demolish each day. You are no longer just soldiers. You are a demolition crew, systematically tearing down the magnificent city as you advance. You move through a landscape of utter horror. The city is dying. The canals, once clean and bustling with canoe traffic, are now choked with the floating, bloated bodies of the dead. The stench of death is a constant suffocating presence, a thick, sweetish smell that clings to the back of your throat and from which there is no escape. The people you encounter are no longer the proud, fierce warriors you first faced. They are skeletal, starving ghosts, their bodies wasted by the smallpox and by months of famine. Yet they fight on with a desperate, hopeless courage. Men, women, and even young boys hurl stones from the rooftops, their faces contorted with a hatred that is deeper than any you have ever known. You are no longer fighting for gold or for glory or even for God. You are fighting in a state of numb, pitiless survival. Your own heart has been hardened into a stone. You see the suffering of the civilians, the starving children, the weeping women, and you feel a distant, abstract pity. But it is immediately suppressed by the memory of the screams from the sacrificial altars and the faces of your friends who drowned in the causeway. This is a war of annihilation, a struggle with no room left for mercy. Finally, your division, along with the others, breaks through into the great market square of Tlatelolco, the last bastion of Aztec resistance. Here the final desperate battle is fought amidst the ruins of the once great marketplace. The last of the Aztec warriors, led by their young emperor, make their stand. The fighting rages for a full day until the ground is slick with blood and the last of the defenders are cut down. In the late afternoon, a Spanish brigantine on the lake intercepts a large, decorated canoe attempting to flee the city. Aboard it is the emperor. With his capture, the last flicker of resistance dies. A strange, eerie silence falls over the ruined city. The constant booming pulse of the war drum. The shriek of the conch shell trumpets. The screams of battle, the sounds that have been the soundtrack to your life for the past 3 months, are gone. All that is left is the low, heartbreaking sound of weeping from the thousands of starving survivors. The battle is over. The great city of Tenochtitlan has fallen. You have won, but it is not a victory. You stand on the top of a great pyramid, looking out over the city you have just conquered. It is not the magnificent white city you first saw from the mountains. It is a smoking, rubble-strewn ruin, a vast open grave. In the days that follow, you and your comrades search desperately for the treasure, the great hoard of gold you lost during La Noche Triste, but it is gone. It was never recovered from the lake. The plunder you find in the ruined city is pitifully small, not nearly enough to compensate for the horrors you have endured. The dream of gold that drove you across the ocean and through this nightmare has turned to ash in your mouth. You have survived. You are a conqueror of one of the world's great empires, but you are a haunted man. You will forever carry the memory of the blood on the temple walls, the screams of your friends drowning in the darkness, and the hollow eyes of the starving children in the final days of the siege. Years later, you stand on the same spot, but the ruins are gone. A new city is being built on top of the old, a Spanish city of stone churches and colonial plazas called Mexico City. The nightmare is over, but you know that it is not. It is a part of you now. It lives in your dreams and the quiet moments of the day. You came to this new world seeking a fortune, but all you found was a different kind of poverty, a poverty of the soul, and a nightmare from which you will never truly wake. Our journey with the Conquistador in the Aztec Empire is now at an end. We have felt the humid heat of a new world, seen the impossible splendor of a city on a lake, and heard the terrifying beat of the serpent-skin drum. It was a world where greed and faith were indistinguishable, where the pursuit of a golden dream led to a bloody nightmare, and where the clash of two great empires resulted in the utter ruin of one and the eternal scarring of the other. That world of Quetzal feathers, obsidian blades, and burning temples has now faded away, leaving only the quiet of the present moment.
Ow.
The Conquistador's long and terrible nightmare is over, and now so is yours. There is nothing left to do but to rest, to let go of the day, and to drift into the deep and peaceful sleep that you deserve. Sleep well.